and Industry, Calcutta. May I thank you for being present for this online panel discussion. The subject is hashtag Reset India 2020. As you're all aware that the corona pandemic has globally completely disrupted economic and social structures, more than obviously the old normal has disappeared. And we are trying to envision what that new normal shall be. Personally, I imagine myself being caught unaware in the middle of an explosion and attempting to peep through the blinds of disruption and gaze at what possibly lies beyond. Uh, it is my privilege to introduce our moderator and the panelist for today's webinar. Our moderator, Mr. Najib Arif. Welcome, Najib.
Thank you.
Mr. Najib Arif brings with him 32 years of rich and valuable experience. Mr. Arif is the Executive Vice President and Chief of Corporate Communications of ITC Limited, one of India's foremost private sector companies and a multi-business Indian conglomerate with a market cap exceeding US dollars 50 million. Mr. Arif is the spokesperson of the ITC Group and on the company's behalf interacts closely with all its external stakeholders, including multinational institutions, government chambers of commerce, media, etc. Thank you very much for being with us today, Najib.
Thank you.
Our panelists, Mr. Jain Mehta. Mr. Mehta is the Senior General Manager, Planning and Marketing at the Gujarat Cooperative Milk Marketing Federation Limited, AMUL, as we all know it, which is India's largest food products marketing organization. Jain has been associated with AMUL since the last 28 years. He has rich experience in domestic and international marketing of the entire range of AMUL dairy products. He's also served as in charge managing director of AMUL Dairy Anand from April to September 2018. Jain, thank you very much for sparing time and being with us here this evening.
Thank you. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Our second panelist, Mr. Abhijit Roy, Managing Director and CEO, Berger Paints India Limited. Mr. Roy took over as MD CEO in 2012, and between then and now, Berger India's market cap has increased from rupees 3693 crores to more than 27,000 crores, taking it to the top 100 most valuable companies in India. Mr. Roy has 29 years of valuable experience, and thank you very much for being with us here this evening, Abhijit.
Mr. Hoon, correction, 48,000 crore market cap.
Okay, let's do okay, 48,000. The little piece of paper I have says 27,000 crores.
No problem.
Okay. I mean, I'll have to really hit the market for the Berger shares now. Okay. Our third panelist, indeed a privilege, have Mr. Rohit Ohri, Group Chairman and CEO, FCB India. Mr. Ohri brings himself 26 years of experience. As Chairman and CEO, FCB India, Rohit Ohri leads FCB in India. He serves as a member of the Global Operating Committee and reports directly to Carter Murray in New York. He is one of the CEOs helping guide the global company. Thank you very much for being with us, Rohit. Before I hand over to the moderator, may I draw attention to two minor things. I would request everyone to mute their audios and video, right, for bandwidth reasons. As regards questions, the chat box is open. All questions may be forwarded to Mr. Shorajit Purukastya, who is the Deputy Director General of the Bengal Chamber of Commerce, and they shall be duly forwarded to the moderator. In case we see any ranting and raving from any participants, we may be compelled to close the chat box for a couple of seconds. Right? May I now hand over to Najib, who will actually handle the proceedings for the entire evening. Thank you very much, Najib. Mr. Najib Arif, please. Hello.
Yeah, very good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you, Anup, and welcome everyone to this webinar by the Bengal Chamber. I can see a lot of friends across the screens here, and I wish we could have met personally, but good evening, everyone, and welcome. It's indeed a pleasure to moderate this very distinguished panel, and let me also add my words of welcome to Abhijit, to Jayan, and to Rohit as well. Given the tight schedule that Anup has said, let me cut to the chase very fast. I think as we move across this 50th day of the lockdown, I think all of you would be submerged by the jargon that you've all been hearing in the last 50 days. You know, the new normal, the work from home, the work at home, and, you know, the cleaning at home and the cooking at home, and also the worst disruption since the World War II and so on and so forth. So without really getting into that space, I just wanted to highlight three issues. And like Anup, if you could kindly mute your microphones because we can hear a lot of conversation on the other side. Please mute your microphones, please. Yeah, so as I was saying, yeah, I'm going to highlight three broad issues, more as in the form of, if you like, questions to the panel known as Anup has. First foremost, I think everyone's mind is where is economic admittedly? This has been one of the worst disruptions we've seen for many, many years now. And therefore, when you look at this whole paradox of what is happening, where is growth going to come from? What are countries going to do? Now, the way we have seen this, there are three basic distinct areas. One is survive, the second is revive, and the third is thrive. Now, survival, certainly at this point of time, when you look at it, you're looking at the impact on the healthcare sector, you're looking at livelihoods and what is happening there, you're looking at reverse migration. When you're looking at revival, you're looking at how are the wheels of the economy going to start again? Where is the money going to be spent from? Where is the money going to come from as well? And of course, as the economy eases out, how is things going to pan out? And the third, the thriving part, is when people will leverage the opportunities out of this crisis, because I certainly believe that there will be a lot of opportunities like many other crises that you have. So the first part is that where is the growth going to come from? Now, traditionally, growth across the world has been driven either by a private consumption-led economy, either by an export-driven economy, or by a growth in the service sector. Broadly, these are the three areas. Now you can see that in the short run and in the medium term, and perhaps even in the longer run, it will be depending a lot. Growth will depend on the investment spending that the government will do, the stimuli that we keep on hearing about, and so on and so forth. So where is this stimuli going to be necessitated? From business, all of you sitting here, where is it that we want the stimuli? Do we want it in consumer spending? Do we want it in liquidity? Do we want it in some other areas? Do we want a combination of all of that? I think that is what is going to drive growth and will be very important to hear from some of the panelists. The other side of the spectrum, in terms of consumers, that is the second basket I was getting to. Certainly, how will they behave in this new normal? What is going to happen to consumer behavior, right? For example, now disruption has not been new to business. And I think even consumers, and admittedly, yes, this is a very different life-changing event, but consumers also have been facing new normals for a long time. You know, for example, any disruptive activity which has changed the context. For example, the new normal has changed for consumers when you got your first SMS, your first WhatsApp, your first online banking, your first ticket that you bought in the airlines, the first time you did home delivery at home, the first time you got food ordered at home. And of course, you've been also a subject of a lot of business processes in terms of artificial intelligence, from machine learning, big data, all being used to reach you in some way. But if you look at it from that new normal perspective, there is another proponent which says that, you know, the more things change, the more things they remain the same. So therefore, they're saying that basic consumer principles haven't changed. There is a product, there is a consumer, there is consumer behavior. You have to reach the product to the consumer. You have to understand, you know, how it's going to be convincing him, how it's going to delight them, how it is going to incite them, how it is going to evoke them. So certain principles will remain the same. However, there is going to be a change in behavior as behaviors become habits and as we go on forward. So what are those behavior changes going to be? Are they going to change from consumer spending and start saving more? So what would be the contours of the consumer at that point of time, and where are we going there? The third area that I'm going to very briefly talk about is collaboration and compassion. What we saw in the last 50 days, and as a company like ITC, when we reached essential commodities right from day one, food and sanitizers and hygiene products and so on, there's been tremendous amount of collaboration across the value chain, whether it was the farmers, whether it was, your manufacturing, your workers, or somewhere, the distributors, and what you saw, the frontline providers. The collaboration amongst partners, we have also got into partnerships with very unlikely people to deliver products to people and so on and so forth. The other area was compassion, not only about each other. People have gone beyond their egos to help each other, to sort of support each other in this crisis, but there's also been compassion for planet and the people, that you're suddenly seeing a new world in front of you. Birds are chirping, the trees are looking greener, the air is cleaning up, and you're all saying that I want a cleaner world, I want a better world going forward. And so how is this sustainability going to affect what we do in business going forward? So these three aspects of where is growth going to come from, where is consumer going to change, what about collaboration and cooperation, with that is what I'm going to set the tone, if you like, Anup, as you said. And let me first start off the kick off this discussion by asking Jayan. So we look forward to you as a very well-loved brand. And so therefore, I can tell you how much of Amul I've had during this lockdown. But please continue, Jayan, with your presentation.
Thank you so much. Thank you for setting this tone. Thank you, Anupji, for inviting, and thank you, Smarajit, also for bringing me back to Calcutta. We last met in the month of August, and I'm back today and looking at the list of people in the group. I think I'm still back in Calcutta, though not physically, but virtually. Having said that, I'll set the context of how Amul as a cooperative has been able to or trying to face the challenge of lockdown, which I'm sure all of you in the audience as well as on the panel have been finding it a very, very tough in the current situation. Amul, as we know, is a cooperative which is owned by 36 lakh farmers. We collect close to 230 lakh liters of milk every day from 18,500 villages. We are the 9th largest dairy in the world. And our turnover, the brand turnover last year was about 50,000 crore rupees. That is about $7 billion. More than 320 lakh packs, that's about 160 to 170 lakh liters of milk is being sold to 1,000 consumers in 1,000 cities and towns across India. And that makes the entire challenge of supply very, very critical. And that's what happens when the corona strikes. You are likely to face a scenario which would actually disrupt the entire supply chain from cow to consumer. So there is milk coming from the cows. The cow doesn't know there is corona, but the consumers want the milk. And if the supply chain is affected, it will really create problems at both the end. So, and this is what is our supply chain, which actually is. So at the GCF, which is in the center where I work, we have 1,000 employees. But on the left-hand side, there are member unions, 18 district unions, more than 15,000 people working, 18,000 villages, 36 lakh farmers. And on the right side, we have 10,000 distributors, 1 million retail outlets, and millions of customers also looking at the availability of products continuous basis. Now, what happens in such a situation, and how would a management respond to a crisis? And we don't have to look far. Our founding chairman, Dr. Kurian, has already told us this, that in every crisis, if you look carefully, there is an opportunity. And he said that he would never sidestep a crisis, and more monstrous the crisis, he will be tempted to rush it, grasp it by the horns, and maneuver it to give what he wanted. And this is what Dr. Kurian has articulated in his book, his biography, I Too Had a Dream. And this is what Amul has learned from, and that's what our leadership, our managing director, Mr. R.S. Sodhi, he immediately sprung into action, and he said that this is where he needs to communicate to all the stakeholders, right from government on one side, to the farmers on the other side, to the employees, and continuously, ever since middle of March, he's been there as a face of the brand and trying to communicate with all concerned the key aspects required to keep business to normal levels, as normal as possible. So on top left, you see the Secretary to the Government of India in a video conference, to our colleagues across the country, our CEOs of all the dairy plants, and so on. Continuously conversation are going on to take timely action, speedy action, because you couldn't travel. But this is the only mode of communication which was very well adapted. And continuous communication to consumers also, they don't panic, all products are available round the clock. All this helped in settling down the problems and bringing business to as normal levels as possible. When we met in Calcutta in August last year, we discussed that 4 P's of marketing is what Kotler taught us. But Dr. Kurian said that this is the Amul's logo in which there are 4 hands. So all the 4 hands represent 4 different aspects of the business: the farmer, the professional, the marketer, and the customer. So we will look at today from the COVID lens that how each one of them adapted to the changing environment. Started with the most important thing, social distancing in villages. We are collecting milk from 36 lakh farmers twice a day across 18,500 villages. And this is a very, very integral part. It cannot stop at any cost. So you have to follow the norms, you follow the guidelines which the government gave, the food safety authorities gave, and you can see this change happening, including sanitization of village societies, sanitization of entire villages at some cases. And as we mentioned last time, I told we are collecting 4 lakh liters of milk from Bengal. These are pictures from Bengal villages where we are about present in 300 villages, and 6 lakh liters of milk is coming through the process, like say, social distancing and other things which you are deploying in Gujarat. Coming on to the next part, all the plants have to be run. We have 84 dairy plants. We had average was 230 lakh liters of milk per day. In this season, we are handling 20% more milk. So whereas companies take a lot shutdown, here you are trying to work at 120% of your efficiency. And that's where the challenge lies in managing it in the changing environment. So you can see the various steps taken. I mean, several of the villages are declared red zones, containment zones. In that also you have to go and collect milk. And so like doctors use the PPE suits, our staff also has been using it. We are sanitizing, we're using thermal sensors, using distancing, sanitizing every single vehicle, tanker, whatever comes in the dairy plant, continuous sanitization of the entire plant. Even people follow the same process in the canteens and the workmanship. Key thing is moving the goods. This is a big challenge. Most companies had it, but milk being an essential product, we had to get permits from every single vehicle, put large displays, milk is an essential product, and that's how we've been able to move lot of the entire quantity of milk in all the cargo through rail, through road, through sea, all possible modes of transportation. And the real heroes in this are our tanker drivers. There are more than 5,000 such tanker drivers who have been handling, transferring 400 lakh liters of milk to every corner of the country. And they have been the face of the brand in this major crisis. Then comes the job of the marketeer, that you have milk, you have customers on the other side. How do you manage that? So we discussed about the 4 supply chain. Amul had the frozen at -20 degrees ice cream, the chilled butter 0 to 4, the ambient at room temperature, products like Tetra Pak milk, ghee, and so on and so forth, and fresh products which go directly from the plant to the market. One category which took a major hit was ice creams, because we couldn't sell any of the ice creams. So what we did, but the distributor was idle, his investment was there. So the ice cream distributors was told to handle milk, he was told to handle the chilled products, and so all of a sudden, all the distributors started working, and you could see a force multiplier effect. A fresh milk distributor also handling beverages in Calcutta, Bombay, Delhi, all the major markets. An ice cream distributor also taking milk and dairy products in market. The dairy products were anyway sold by the dairy distributor. So actually in this situation, we saw a force multiplier effect. And we were working with 3x efficiency instead of the normal 1x efficiency. And advertising can't stop, branding cannot stop, new product launches also cannot stop. People were talking about immunity. We launched Haldi Doodh. Next week, we are launching the Tulsi Doodh and the Ginger Doodh in the market. We are launching a range of sundaes. We launched 6 new advertising campaigns in the middle of this COVID thing. Be it Amul Cool or Immunity film, which talks about milk, immunity and milk, or the Amul Corporate TVC, or Tetra Pak milk, or the Dahi TVC. So continuous communication with the customer is essential. And we said that this should not be a reason for us to stop our normal activities. Amul parlors are there across the country. We're leveraging that in a very big way because the entire range of brands are available. And because they're milk parlors, they are not like any other regular shops. So we get permission to open the stores almost the entire day in most of the markets, including red zones. And on top of it now, since demand is there, you can see an Amul mobile parlor on the right side. We are going to residential societies and selling products directly to the customer also with the support of the RWAs. So this is how it's helping us. And this entire thing we've been able to leverage sitting at one location or maybe 60 locations where our sales teams and branches are, because we are on a common software. So all the milk comes on the common software, all the vehicles are monitored through a common fleet, all the distributors do billing on a common software, we know the lat long of every single outlet, and there is Amul Cart app also where the salesman cannot go and take orders. Our parlors, our key retail outlets place an order on an app and we are able to service that. So there was no disruption because technology was with us and we were able to closely monitor each of these things. And then finally comes the customer, people like you and me, who have been sitting at home trying to spend the time in the best possible manner. And brand has to continuously communicate. This is what we discussed last time also. The context is lockdown. The consumer is at home. He wants to see the content. which he tries to be familiar or he can associate with. And that's where the nostalgia plays a big role. And consistency in communication is Amul's hallmark. So better talk to the consumer in the language he or she has been used to seeing Amul. And that's where this Amul Topicals came. We communicated the key precautions to be taken in COVID times through the butter topicals in a very, very simple way. Be it talking about zones, be it talking about focusing on not shaking hands, but just doing namaste, doing video conferencing, flattening the curve, and so on and so forth. And then comes the key part of advertising. In the middle of March when we met, and unfortunately Rohitji was not well, he couldn't come. He heads our advertising agency. In that meeting in middle of March, we said that we need to double our spends on advertising. We didn't know about lockdown in those times, but we said that if lockdown is there, people will spend more time in news. Let's invest more in communication. So we increased our presence in news, in movies. We boosted our digital presence. Physical papers were not coming, so we got into digital papers. And since nobody else was advertising, we got discounts, we got good rates, we got sponsorships. And key thing which we did was the sponsorship of Ramayana and Mahabharata. So within 15 minutes of the Honorable Minister announcing the launch of Mahabharata and Ramayana, we reached out to Doordarshan. We managed to get a deal out of them when not a single deal existed. And as a result of which, the rest, as they say, is history. Since most of you are media and business professionals, you can see the ratings of Ramayana on the right side. The morning show got about 10.5, 11 ratings. TRPs, TBRs, the evening got about 15. Even Mahabharat, 5 and 6. As compared to that, an IPL 2019, an average rating was 3.5. So imagine the brand, which is the principal sponsor, getting 10 times the rating of an IPL, and dare I say, at a fraction of a cost which you pay for an IPL. And since people were wanting nostalgia, we ran 120 retro ads which were released in 1960s to 1990s, as Amul classics were shown on Mahabharat. So it was not hard sell actually. It was trying to communicate to the customers in the language they wanted to connect with the times they were very happy and familiar with, the good old 90s. And as a result of which, we did about 188 different Amul ads. 120 old, the remaining 70 new, and it's almost a record of sorts. And this created a huge buzz in social media. And while the TRPs of Ramayana Zoom, conversations around Amul also continuously increased. People, next best thing which they did at lockdown was cooking. And food was very critical. We had a bank of 550 recipes in 11 languages, which was being continuously seen by people. And YouTube, I'm happy to say, has announced that one of this, our recipe is among the top 10 ads which broke through the clutter in the period April 2020. And Food Factory also. People wanted to see the science of food. We had the films ready and we are promoting it on all the edutainment channels continuously so that people know the science of making food, the hygiene and processes being done in manufacturing the Amul range of products. Good part about it is that we were among the top 10 advertisers in the country in the month of April. And the good news is also that there was growth in business, and we grew in almost every product category, perhaps except ice creams. And this double-digit growth has also given us a hope that we will also close this year with almost 15%, which has been in line with our CAGR for 17% over the last 10 years. And this has also happened across the world because under lockdown, people are consuming more and more dairy products. In UK also, there was about a 10% growth in the dairy business, and cheese and butter also growing similar to the fashion in which India, all these product categories like cheese, paneer, UHT milk, butter, ghee, milk powders, and all have been growing. Now let's do some future gazing. And if you are in this business of any of these categories, please take a screenshot of this because this is what BCG said. And after interviewing a lot of customers, that what is going to be the future of these different categories. So obviously, since we are in fresh food, staples, household products and all, people are going to continue to spend in these categories. But if you move on to the next slide, these are the areas which are of big concern. And consumers across the country, like Arif Saab said, they are rationalizing their entire behavior in the coming months. So we need to, if you are in this business, you need to be worried and also look at how to change the perspective of the customers who are the category and the business you are in. And I'll share a very simple story about how we did it before I close. One of the things which people were very concerned even after lockdown was lifted is they're not going to watch movies, they're not going to eat out, they're not going to order food, and forget everything else. People are also reluctant to read a newspaper. I mean, which we thought is a given thing and a practice we've been doing for the last 50 years. So we being the largest food brand, we cannot afford that one segment, which is hotel restaurants, to die down. And in order to rekindle the interest of the consumers in this category and the chefs who are also sitting at home, we started this live recipes on Amul Facebook page. We have about 15-16 lakh followers on Facebook. Every day we are doing about 10 Facebook lives. So far in last 25 days, we have done more than 300 chefs. And not only India, across US, UK, Singapore, Bangladesh, they come, they present the recipe to teach the consumers who are at home, who are wanting to learn from the chefs directly. And this is generating a huge buzz. And we are doing about 11 sessions every day. And 4 crore minutes of content has been viewed in the last 20 days. An average of 20 lakh contents, and our Facebook reach increased from 2.5 crore accounts to about 6.5 crore accounts. And all this happening at zero cost. The chefs are not charging us anything. The consumers are viewing the content and spreading the word around. And at zero cost, we've been able to rekindle the interest of the chef and the consumers in this hotel restaurant category. So tomorrow when the lockdown is lifted, maybe another couple of weeks down the line, people would like to go back to the restaurants of the chefs and eat directly from what they have showed cooking also. To sum up, I think we need to be very concerned about this pandemic. It is serious, it is real, and it's going to be there. So the key thing, learning for all of us as consumers and as business professionals, is to stay safe, stay healthy, and also tell the teams like that. One learning from this crisis, and we have experts after me to talk about, is that consumers will trust a brand with a greater purpose. So if you are any other brand, or if you are a brand, you want to tell the customers that we are working for a particular cause, this is what we did for you in the past, we are going to do for you in the future and stand with you, I think they will trust you better. We are moving from a consumer era to a post-consumer era. I mean, we had excesses in our lives, in our behavior, in our spending. But now we are all going to look towards for health and a better balance in what we are going to do. And that balance can be a work-life balance, it can be a balance towards spending for good versus bad, and so on and so forth. So this is what we as marketers need to know of. And to succeed in any adversity, I think a digital infrastructure, a strong digital backbone will help most of the companies, because digital is the way forward. I never imagined when we met last in August that we will talk again through VC, but that's a new norm today. And finally, WhatsApp has been an integral part of our life. And Arifji talked about the weather changing, and I hope that I'm sitting at such a distance. I hope I've been able to communicate my point of view to all of you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jayan. That was certainly a very inspiring presentation. And even though Anup asked me to sum up things, I'm glad that you put up at the end of the slide as well. I think here most of the participants will see this, that, you know, right from securing the entire supply chain, looking at how to reach the consumer, the innovations that they did, both in whether it is advertising, whether it is in creating those home kind of recipes for people to see, and the whole really effort and passion that you did to make sure that Amul was always right on top in the consumer's mind at different points of time. I think it's a great example of not only what you do with the farmers and the entire supply chain, how you reach this product out to people in this difficult time, but also the thought going forward as to what are you going to really look at, staying healthy, looking at what you need to do for the larger purpose, as well as, you know, very important need to stay digital and so on and so forth. Great work, Jayan, and all the best. I mean, I remember your chairman and I was somewhere at an airport, and I can see the passion there, because when I told him that ITC is launching chocolates as well, he took out from his bag a couple of chocolates and said, "Harek ko tod ke," he was feeding me to make sure that I get all the taste out there. So I can see in each one of you that passion. So congratulations once again. We move on to Berger, again, a very well-known company. Anup is already buying their shares as we speak, once we heard about your market cap. So without any further ado, let me turn to Abhijit. All over to you. No? No. You probably need to unmute. Yeah. Hi. You'll have to unmute, Abhijit. We are not hearing you. Sarojit, you might have to get someone to unmute, please.
I have done it. No problem.
Yeah. Okay, great.
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yes, of course. Carry on.
Is the screen visible as well?
Yes, Mr. Roy, visible, perfectly visible. This is Sarojit.
Thanks. So, Amul, of course, needs no introduction, an iconic brand, absolutely. We've been seeing this, hearing about it, tasting it in all its forms, right from childhood. But the enormity of the supply chain challenge is something which is mind-boggling, absolutely. I will, of course, speak much more on the consumer side of it. There was one slide which, Jayan put up, that, in this COVID situation, after the COVID, what will happen to different industries. And in that, the essentials, of course, will continue to do well. The construction and renovation sector in which we belong seems to be all in the red. And, it's a scary picture which was, projected there. We have thought of, being more optimistic on this side. And how do we overcome this situation is what I would like to talk about. So this scenario we have seen all across. It's been a part and parcel of the initial few days of the lockdown that we entered. Normal places which are normally very, very crowded, all empty streets, and we were used to this situation which the lockdown brought about. At the same time, I would say that we did place this lockdown at the right time, because with a populous country like India, if we had failed to do this, probably we would have been in very, very big trouble, because the type of density that we have, if you look at New York and if you multiply it across many cities in India, that would have been a right royal disaster. So we did manage to contain the disease to a large extent. It's there in most of the urban centers, localized into few places. Vast stretches of the rural belt remains relatively unaffected by this pandemic. So we hope that the rural belt will do much better than some of the urban centers, at least for our category. It doesn't matter for Amul so much, but for us it is extremely important. What were the 3 steps that happened? That was COVID. Then within after 4th May, what happened? And then what do we look forward to from the 18th of May? The first stage, it was suddenly announced lockdown, and the message was jaan hai to jahan hai. So you look after your health first, rightly so, because if you are alive, then only you will think of the rest of the stuff. So there was complete lockdown except for essentials and pharma. So therefore, those were the 2 industries which were on. Little or nothing that we could have done except for in-house training, preparing for better times in the times ahead. So that I will talk about what we did in that period. The second is, stage, which is Jaan Bhi Hai, Jahan Bhi Hai, which is started from the 4th, little bit of opening of the markets, some economic, activity beginning, so all test trials going on, some of the factories opened up, and then some of the retail shops opened up and we started supplying. So gradual return to normalcy. The third stage, which is, Atmanirbhar Bharat, which is what, has been, talked about 2 days back. We are looking at, a thriving economy, probably some good opportunities which we need to grab. So any problem, results in 2 ways in which a person can look at it. One is he gets despondent, he starts worrying about things, he starts, extremely, sort of worried man that what is going to happen in the future. I was, participating in a TV program a few days back, and the anchor went on and on as to how many jobs have been lost and how many more are going to be lost, and what is the crazy situation as far as the pandemic is concerned, and the world is collapsing and all that, till I couldn't hold it anymore. And I said, listen, the way you are doing it, it will be a self-fulfilling prophecy, because most of the people will think that yes, this is collapsing, no worker is going to remain there, everyone will be sacked, and then your agency, your TV house also will have no advertisement, and you will also be removed. So therefore, this is not going to continue. Let's look at what are the possible positives, because the mind needs to be focused much more on the positives to get positive results. Otherwise you will get bogged down on the negativity and nothing will come out of it. So what are the positives that the country can look forward to? One of the things is, self-reliance, which is what has been talked about, the Make in India theme. We think that, China is probably going to be a bit affected. after this coronavirus crisis, there are people from Japan, from Korea, from US who are looking at an option of exiting China to some extent, not exactly fully exiting, but having an alternate option ready. And India can fit into this, very well. And there is therefore a big opportunity for us. We have reduced the taxes in the earlier budget. We are taking many other initiatives now in terms of labor, etc. Probably the land needs some of the other measures which we need to know in terms of infrastructure, of toning up the administration, which I hope will happen. And therefore there is a positive light of grabbing this opportunity which is available to us. The second is the Swachh Bharat Abhiyan. Probably it will gain a fresh lease of life. All of us have become much more hygienic after this, at least in our homes, in our surroundings, and hopefully that will be a culture which we will live with. Because to be frank, hygiene was something which we were not very bothered about in large stretches of India. And this pandemic has opened that up, and it gives us an opportunity to actually become much more safe and hygienic from that perspective. Now, what are the behavioral changes that we are likely to see in the Indian consumers? As I said, I will focus more on this side because that's what is what we are in the consumer category. So one of them, first of all, is enhanced sense of hygiene. So this is a given because of this constant battering that has been happening. Please use hello. Some noise is coming. Yeah.
Please, everyone, please put your microphones on mute. We are hearing your home conversations.
So
Abhijit, please.
Sanitizers, hand washes, soaps, so it's become, I used to wash.
Excuse me, please, someone has to mute your film because we are hearing your home conversations. Please put your microphone on mute. Abhijit, sorry. Please carry on.
No problem. So this is the first sense of enhanced sense of hygiene. The second is demand for hygienic and at-home service. We have seen also a fresh lease of life for local stores. We now know the importance of these stores. They actually helped us to survive in these difficult times in many cases. Even Reliance Jio with Facebook and are trying to get these local stores on board to actually deliver material possibly at a very optimal cost. Then of course the other factor which is there, which is contactless shopping. So these are issues which are likely to come up in the near future. What have we done in order to address this? First of all, our response to this first hygiene platform. So we had a product called Silk Breathe Easy, which we had just introduced in the month of January. This is sort of an antibacteria. It is also antivirus to some extent. Some of the viruses it impacts. We are also sending it for testing for coronavirus. The third is it is anti-pollution. It absorbs sulfur dioxide, nitrogen dioxide, and formaldehyde, and therefore it purifies the air. The ad theme is you wash your hands, so you are thinking you are safe. But what about your house? So this is your ghar ka sanitizer. So that's what we have come out with the Silk Breathe Easy platform. We have started advertising in newspapers, in the markets which have opened up for us, which is primarily in the East and Kerala, etc. And we have also, started going into the digital media in a big way, promoting this. We will get into TV probably more towards after the monsoon around September. So this is Silk Breathe Easy, which is on the antibacterial, antivirus, anti-pollution platform with the theme Ghar Ka Sanitizer. Then we introduced, hand sanitizers as well, just introduced in fact, and along with that surface sanitizer. And we will very soon get also into home hygiene platform. So this is the entire platform is on the Breathe Easy name. And this is basically on the antibacterial, antivirus, and anti-pollution theme. So therefore, this is something which is an opportunity for us, a new product range. In the case of sanitizer, we already booked some orders of 6 crores from the existing dealer network which we have in the paint dealer network itself, because lots of these painters, they all use it, the dealers themselves, their families, and there are many customers who come to those stores and they are also buying possibly, and therefore we are selling. And this is one segment which is likely to open up in a big way. We haven't even gone to the FMCG distributors or to the B2B players. And so there is an enormous opportunity that exists in a category in which we were not even present and which we see as an opportunity for us now. The second thing is which we did was in the service front. Now in the cities, it will be a little bit of a fear will be there in the mind of the consumers, that someone painter walks into the house, should I do painting? Should I postpone the painting? This is a problem. How do we address this problem? Is therefore we need to think of solutions, right? So therefore, we have devised, we had a service called the Express Painting Service. This is a service which we give to consumers in most urban centers across the country. And this is differentiated from the normal painting because we use automatic machines. So for example, when a person painter goes to a house, he uses a sandpaper to rub on the wall, and there is a lot of dust which flies around, and it creates a mess in the house, and people don't want that. It's a pollution also. A lot of asthmatic patients find it very problematic as well. So now we devised an automatic machine which actually does the same sanding, but it has a vacuum attached to it, and therefore it sucks the dust away, and hence there is very little dust which flies around. It also makes it very fast in terms of the operation, and also saves labor cost and time. So therefore our slogan was faster, cleaner, better. Now we removed the better part of it and made it safer. So it's faster, cleaner, and safer. What are the things that we did in order to make it safe? First of all, we have created one consumer mobile app in this lockdown period. And this mobile app, whenever a customer orders for the express painting, he can download this app immediately. In this lockdown period, we also did the KYC of all our painters who operate with us in the express painting. So we have more than about 20,000 of them, and all of them, their photographs, their details were captured. So when a customer is giving us an order on the express painting, the first assurance he gets is normally that these painters tend to pick up people from the para, naka they call it. So from the naka they pick up random people and they will bring to the house, which can be a problem in this situation. So to assure them that that is not the case, these are all trained painters of Berger and their IDs are all there. Their photograph along with details immediately gets downloaded onto the app. They are all got Arogya Setu downloaded. Then they have take every day their morning temperatures, they record it in their app, which they have on their, and then that figure gets reflected in the consumer app immediately, so that they know that this fellow who is coming to my house has normal temperature as of today. Then also we have sent one kit, which is a safety kit, which is QR coded. So every time the safety kit reaches the customer, he can use his app to scan that QR code, and we know that that safety kit has reached his house. That safety kit has in it masks, gloves, for the painter to wear, and along with it, there is this sanitizer which is for sanitizing the room once the job is complete, the floor cleaner for cleaning the floor, for washing it off, for all any marks which are there. So all the measures that we could take to make it absolutely safe has been taken. In on top of it, we use the Breathe Easy product, so that that is antibacterial, antivirus, and anti-pollution. So overall, we give a far safer proposition to the customer, makes it easier for him to make a decision to go ahead and paint, instead of brooding and thinking that whether I should allow these painters to come in. We are making it relatively easier and safer for him to go with this type of an express painting service. So this is something which we will propagate in digital media, on television, in press, etc. When the lockdown finally opens up fully. Then comes the market behavior. We believe that the markets will behave in different ways in different states, and in different ways in the urban and in the rural. So some states will open up, probably in the east they will open up much faster. In the west it will take probably less, more time. Maharashtra and Gujarat specifically might take a bit more time. than what will happen in the east. Already Northeast, Orissa, etc. has opened up and is fully operational. So the rural areas, lower incidence of infection, fewer disruptions, good Rabi harvest, better prices for crops. There is a resurgence in demand which is expected from the rural areas. The urban areas are much heavily hit by the pandemic. More mini lockdowns are likely, going forward. Labor shortage, which might be experienced. Slower revival, therefore, in the urban areas. What's the action plan that we have done? We have reallocated resources, first of all, to the semi-urban towns and the rural areas. All the MTs or management trainees or sales officer trainees whom we have recruited, we have placed them all into these areas now instead of putting them into the cities. We believe there is a huge opportunity of expanding network of distribution for us in these areas, and also doing lots of demand generation activities which can help in selling our products into these semi-urban and rural areas, and that will probably help us to tide over the situation much better. What's the other thing that we could have done? Reduce the cost base by 15 to 20%. There is a golden opportunity for reducing costs. Identify and remove non-essential costs. Under normal circumstances, we wouldn't have bothered so much, or there would have been resistance from the system to remove these. Now you can, with this, under these circumstances, remove all these non-essential costs much easily. Renegotiate contracts and AMCs as underlying prices have softened. So the products which are being used for these by the contract service providers probably would have reduced in prices, so it can easily be renegotiated now. Renegotiate rents and other fixed expenses. We have managed to do that with many of our landlords, and it's possibly possible to do in many other cases as well. And bargain for better raw material prices. Thankfully for us, the oil prices have dropped dramatically, therefore reducing the RM prices for us, and therefore we have an opportunity of doing this and improving our profitability. Reset supply chain, and Jayan talked about this, but we have our own issues, and we know that factories need to operate now in 3 shifts instead of 1 shift, which they were doing, because instead of having full number of people, you have only 1/3 of the people. Therefore, if you have to produce the same amount of goods, it's a no-brainer that you have to have more shifts running. Productivity improvement and increased automation probably will happen in order to be able to service the requirement. Even warehouses have to move to operate in 2 shifts, which we have started doing. Inventory management is a challenge by itself because of the sudden starts, sudden stoppages. So you have to be very, very agile, very interconnected in terms of the software that you are using. Safety and hygiene of factories, warehouses, and offices to avoid disruption, because one case and the factory will close down and you have to then wash it, and then God knows how many days of problem you will be facing. People get fearful, so you have to be extremely careful on the safety side and be wary about anyone who comes in with the possibility of any symptoms who walks into the factory. Work from home, this is all we have seen. Trend will get probably stronger. Requirement of lesser office space maybe for us. Meetings can happen with more ease. Travel time gets reduced considerably. Local commute time also gets reduced. Hotel and travel bills will also reduce in this situation. So there will be many innovations. There will be opportunities as well, and we have to continuously innovate in order to be in a situation where we shall be overcoming this difficult situation, and at last we will see the sun rising again. Thank you.
Thank you, Abhijit. I certainly like your last slide on we shall overcome. That is really the tone that we must leave with everyone here. Again, a fantastic presentation. I think the focus on many, many things that we need to look at. One is the continuing trend on safety, as you can see, whether it is their plants or in the product itself and how they're delivering it with the consumer end. It's a very important structural shift that you look at when they talk about faster, cleaner, better moving to safer. I would think, Abhijit, that you're still faster, cleaner, better, but you're adding safer to that. So that's a great thing that has been done in the company. And I think looking at the entire perspective of putting QR codes, looking at those apps that you've done, really segmenting markets to be able to allocate resources at the right place at this point of time, moving from urban to rural. And most important, I think something that you mentioned towards the end and what all corporates at this survival and revival places looking is cost. I think if anything that can change the dynamics in the next month or so is really looking at those hidden costs and really looking at how to sort of streamline that to be able to stand faster. I see your focus on the fact that the both the local kirana shops and the sanitation and hygiene products moving faster. I'm very happy to hear that because we are also in Savlon sanitizers and disinfectants, and I saw the huge surge in the market. We had to change an entire perfume factory to make only sanitizers in the last month itself.
Made
But
a
I'm of
close
course,
friend of mine, and we keep talking on
I
this.
know, I know about that. I mean, all of us will need to really produce much more to address the market. Of course, always a concern that travel costs becoming down will impact the hotels being in hotels as well. But yes, there are structural changes, and thanks a lot, Abhijit, for that. We'll move on now to Rohit, and that's going to be another very interesting presentation looking at what is happening in the entire consumer world, people's anxiety, people's aspirations, people looking at wealth, the wealth of hygiene and health at this point of time. How is it going to work? So, Rohit, all over to you.
Thank you, Nadeem. Thank you. I know we've kind of overshot time, so I'm going to go a little faster, and so that we have enough time for the Q&A at the end of it. Anup wanted to close this at 8. We are a little tough, but we'll give this a shot. So essentially, what I'm going to be talking about is really about resetting consumer behavior, post COVID-19, because in my opinion, COVID-19 has drawn a deep line on the sands of time, and there will be a pre-COVID era and a post-COVID era for sure, right? So how will consumer behavior change in the post-COVID era? We've heard of this many times as really the new normal. So what is the new normal, and how will consumers behave in this new normal? The interesting thing is that, when we talk about behavior change, when we talk about consumer behavior change, there are a lot of behaviors that are manifest today. Some of these we believe will stick, and some of these will kind of vanish as the fear of the virus vanishes. So if you look at this social distancing and what that impact has been on consumer behavior has been phenomenal. If you look at this short video which has gone viral, is really about how India is adapting to social distancing.
Mahindra Group Chairman Anand Mahindra is all praise for this e-rickshaw puller for its innovative way of ensuring social distancing. In a video posted by the business tycoon on Twitter, the rickshaw puller's modified vehicle shows 4 separate seating compartments with appropriate distance. Anand Mahindra hailed the creativity of the driver, even suggesting that he would like to hire the person for his research and development team.
So, when you look at this new consumer behavior, this is obviously something that is very, driven by the current fear of the coronavirus. But obviously, social distancing, while it will stay in certain segments and will impact certain consumer behaviors, towards retail or towards, experiential, the big thing is that this will vanish once the fear of the virus vanishes, right? So what is going to stay really is, and the way I see it actually, is about accelerated consumer adoption. Consumer adoption of trends, of relevant trends, which are hitherto been, on the periphery, have been important, but are emerging, but not scale. And I think what this, current crisis is going to do is to give certain, these trends like big scale all of a sudden. So, for instance, the example that I like to share, with a lot of people is really about the demonetization. So, what demonetization really did was it gave, good, bad, or ugly, that's a different conversation really. But what it really did was it gave consumers' sudden, awareness about digital transactions, digital payments, e-commerce actually boomed. So if you look at 3 years down the line, that has really got scale, right? So today, India is the largest, has the largest number of e-transactions in the world, and that's a crisis which created new behavior. And I think a lot of the marginal but important trends will come to mainstream now. So the first and foremost, the most important thing, and we've heard everybody talk about this, what Amul's been doing and what Berger has been doing. Really, health will move from a periphery to a priority. And health and wellness has been something that we've always talked about. It's very metro, and maybe for the affluent classes. But today, I think with the fact that this coronavirus has touched every single person, not just in India, but across the world, I think health and wellness and health and safety will come right in the center of consumer priorities. And that will be the one thing that every category, and you'll be surprised to see the number of categories actually talking about health and wellness. We've seen paints, right? Paints talking about antiviral, right? So a lot of the other categories, we are actually going to see immunity as a big thing that every brand will pivot around. Whether I hear many of the brands. I was just reading that Dabur has put Chyawanprash out to see whether that can build immunity, right? So many brands will pivot around health and wellness, health and safety. That will be really important. We've done some research where automotive sector, and that's a sector that has been hugely impacted. But what we are seeing is that a lot of the millennials who hitherto were using the Olas and the Ubers or public transport are saying that they want personal transport because they're concerned about their safety, right? So this could be a new behavior that emerges and kind of stays an opportunity, right? Because that's what we heard many of the speakers talking about, find the opportunity in this crisis and build on that. And that's something that, when you look at health and safety, will become a big priority and will be the center focus for every category, which is not just about being consumed, but used in any form. The other thing that we'll see a big rise of is automation, and e-commerce, as we call it. You'll find a lot of the industries actually will get into this in a big way, bring it to scale. For instance, when you pass by airports, you've seen the dispensing machines which dispense the soft drinks and the food, but you've never seen a mass adoption of that. You're perhaps going to see a mass adoption of that and more people using that. Airlines, travel, all of them will get into a lot more adoption of automation and interaction with machines, so that the human contact will become less, and people will be more comfortable traveling and coming back to travel. The interesting thing here is, and that's what I was saying, while social distancing will come and go, but it will create certain behaviors which will stay going forward. So we'll become used to the efficiency of it. In the beginning, it's a necessity, but then it becomes an efficiency, and getting used to the efficiency actually creates a new consumer behavior. The other thing, obviously, is the experience economy, right? So a lot of the experiences that brands create in the physical world will have to move to the virtual world. And once they move to the virtual world, you'll find a lot of the brands and the companies finding great efficiencies in that and saying, hey, this is a good way to actually communicate brands, because a lot of the experiences can now be virtual. I mean, for instance, if you look at this, we are having this webinar. How many of you have attended webinars and sat in, and seen presentations before this, right? Or, it may have been infrequent, but the fact is that today you're seeing this and you're seeing that, hey, this is a very productive, a very easy way to actually you know, participate in a lot of the experiences which otherwise time would not have permitted you to do. So this whole thing of moving from physical to virtual, you know, and that's the point that I was talking about earlier. This is not new, right? It's not something that we're all saying, oh my God, this is the first time, and thanks to this, you know, current crisis, this is actually going to become big. This was always there. But the fact is that this adoption of it is going to get accelerated. More and more companies are going to actually say, this is a great way to create experiences for consumers. And maybe you'd see, you know, a shrinkage of actual physical brick and mortar, which is something that's been happening, you know, for a while, but you'll see an acceleration in that. The other thing is really about consumption. And I think, you know, when we talk about conscious consumption, has been a trend, but a very, very marginal trend. It's been emerging, but I believe that that's a trend which will come to the fore now, because we're going to be a lot more conscious about how we consume, what we consume, right? Because what is the impact of our consumption on ourselves first, on our health, on the health of our family, on how we're consuming resources around and creating an impact on the planet as well. That's the whole thing of that consciousness about that, and how that is going to get reflected in how brands communicate, how brands source, how brands actually give service to their customers is really going to become more conscious, and consumers are going to be more conscious about their consumption wants and needs, right? So I think right now we've all understood the difference between what our are and what our needs are, right? So we are servicing our needs, and we know that maybe just servicing our needs, we can still have a life, right? So it's not that you know, all the wants have been taken away, but the needs are actually creating this whole sense of conscious consumption. The other thing, and this is something that you know, we just heard as well from Abhijit, was this whole thing of the resurgence of rural economy. You know, because that's another big thing that we believe that could happen. That's a huge possibility, because so many migrant labor have gone back to their homes, and they've gone back to their homes for safety. They've gone back to their homes because they've either lost their jobs, and you know, it's easier for them to find food and survival and shelter there. So they've gone back home, and maybe a lot of them won't come back. So what's that going to impact, and what's the impact of that going to be on the rural economy, is really something that'll be interesting to see, and will impact a lot of categories as well. Also will impact the way brands are communicating, right? So the fact is that what's the way we can actually drive the consumption now deeper into Bharat, which has always been, you know, the consumption has been centered around, and thinking has been centered around India. So that future focus is also something that would be interesting to see what the impact of this crisis is going to be, and what's the big boost that we're going to see in the rural economy. The other obvious thing is the big reset for retail, right? And you know, the interesting thing right now is that what we've seen, and this is not just a trend for India, we do retail studies across the world, and this is something that we've seen now, a big trend across Europe and the US as well, is that what has happened is that your neighborhood store has come to the party this time, right? Because very large stores, people are scared of going, don't want to take the car out, or there's a lockdown. So what you're looking at is a neighborhood store guy who's actually stuck with you and actually helped you in this time of crisis. So the fact is that this resurgence of the neighborhood store will be some behavior that will carry on for some time, because what we've seen through our research is that what everybody is saying is that, you know, I don't want to travel so far for you know, groceries, or I'm not going to go very far away from where I live. So whether it is a restaurant or a you know, retail outlet, I'd like to be close to my home. So home, community, and the space around that is really what is going to be the big reset for retail. Because as we look at social distancing, and as we look at the fear of congregation in large numbers, the impact on retail is going to be really, really strong. So what and how that shapes up, and the behavior that we're going to see, is really going to be more focused on local. And this is a trend also. If you think about how the Amazons of the world, or Reliance is looking at the local retail, the Kirana outlets, that's what they were wanting to bring to the mainstream, link them all together, and create a whole different chain of connection with consumers. And finally, the home, right? So suddenly the home has become the new, what we say, indoors has become the new outdoors. And that was also a trend happening, right? Because with entertainment like Netflix and other OTT platforms, with food that was being delivered with the Swiggies and the Zomatos of the world, you could eat any meal that you wanted at home. Today, what that has happened is it's accelerated even further, right? So while we may not be ordering, food from outside, but what has happened is we are finding a new comfort in the family, in the community that we are living in the condo that we are, with the RWA that we are in, because everyone has come together to fight this virus. People have stayed at home and clapped, or they've lit a candle, and that has created a whole new set of connections and bonds. And I think this will become a big, reawakening of your bonds with your immediate family, the bonds with the community. Because what I've seen is people live in condos, but they don't know who the other person is on that same floor. Or this is a very metro phenomenon, but that I think is something that is going to come back. People are going to connect more with each other and their support system around pieces of where they live. So that whole thing of, it's always been a source of comfort, today it will be a center of gravity, because I've suddenly discovered at home that I can do exercise, right? So I have a yoga class, and I'm talking about my own experience. I used to go take the car out, go for 15 minutes, drive to the yoga school, then do the yoga class. Today I have my cup of coffee, go into my room, put on my Zoom, and I'm doing a yoga class. And this is something I believe will stay, because at home I've suddenly realized it's so efficient, it's working so well, I still get my full workout, but I'm not wasting time. So suddenly the center of gravity of life will shift to the home. So basically, this is the summary of what I was really talking about, is that the new consumer behavior is really going, what will stick is the adoption will be really of important and emerging trends, but which were marginal. But I think those will the adoption of those trends will get accelerated thanks to the crisis. Thank you.
Thank you, Rohit. That was indeed a very, very interesting presentation. And I think you have been able to really track the consumer pretty well and what they're going to do in the future. A lot of those trends certainly resonate with a lot of us, because you can certainly seeing safety moving from the periphery to priority, looking at the importance of the Kirana store next to you, the whole shift to the efficiency that automation and the entire digital world is going to bring to you. And I think you've really kind of segmented it very well. So congratulations, Rohit, because I could have said a lot about your presentation. Also, the fact that I took a picture of your last slide, because I thought that was pretty well captured what you were saying. There's a whole lot of things to say about your presentation, but given the time frame, Anup, do we have a couple of minutes to do the interaction? Or
sure,
we need
This was the last frame was what you had suggested last time, and as a
Thank you.
advertising agency. We follow clients' instructions to the T.
Fantastic job, though. But that was a presentation I loved, Rohit. It was really prepared very well. Yeah, no, please tell us.
May I recommend that we take at least 3 or 4 questions?
Okay, I'm taking 3 questions because most of the main are more or less grouped around this. So the first one is to Jayan, and I think this is a question all of us in FMCG gets asked all the time. So I'm not surprised at the question. So the question is, we love Amul butter, but it is really in short supply. Amul cheese is not available. So when will things improve? Okay. So Jayan, this is for your consumers.
I anticipated this question, and I have got the branch manager of Calcutta in the group. He's already responded to 3-4 of them. That's what the message I'm getting on WhatsApp. But
I think we lost you a bit.
I'm sorry.
We lost you.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, better, Mr. Mehta.
Yeah. So what I was saying, I anticipated this, and you're right in saying that yes, this is a common question. So I had the branch manager of my Calcutta branch in this group today. So he's seen all the questions and he's privately responded to those who have been asking it. I'm sure they will get their pack of butter and cheese tomorrow morning, first thing.
Very good. Thank you. We'll all look forward to that. Well, the next question is again to Abhijit. This is about 2-3 things. I'll put it together. One is that are you going to introduce express painting in the rural sector as well? Are you going to try and make paints an essential business, essential commodity? And why do you want to do 3 shifts instead of 1? I can answer that, but I leave it to you to answer that quickly.
Right. So the express painting, yes, we are going to take into the smaller towns as well. Rural in the sense that ours is mostly small towns, which we consider as rural because we really don't penetrate in the FMCG way. So that's where we plan to take it. Yes, and the second part of it is related to you asked. The second question was what?
More to do with one is of course why you're going to 3 shifts instead of 1 shift, and the other one was to do with your is there any move to make your product an essential commodity?
Well, we wish it could have become, but it won't, so therefore there are certain essential as of now, which is the sanitizer, which we might, start selling and then probably have. Also the virus protect, type of coatings, which we are looking at. That's an interesting range, that might become very essential, probably more essential than the essential. So that's one option that we are looking at. The third part of it is related to the 3 shifts. Yes, we need to, because if you have to produce with 1/3 the manpower in any one particular shift, with social distancing norms being maintained, we have to do this in 3 shifts only. Then only we can produce the required quantity. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Abhijit. The last question that I have, and I know there's some more questions that have come to this side, but as they said, you have to target your questions to Swarajit and not to the Zoom function here. But Rohit, this is for you. I particularly liked your comment on conscientious consumption. I think moving from conspicuous consumption to conscientious consumption is something very important. So the question that we have here is, how is COVID-19 reshaping values across boardrooms? I know you have a bird's eye view on several boardrooms. So how do you see that moving in terms of values in boardrooms? You are on mute. You're on mute, Rohit.
Sorry. I know everybody thinks that the big conversation in boardrooms is really about cutting costs, cutting any costs that you can, whether it's discretionary costs or cost of talent or reducing salaries and stuff like that. I think while that has been a trend, but I'd like to take something what Abhijit said. The thing is that you can't become a self-fulfilling prophecy, and I truly believe that if you look at the negative side, the negative thing will happen to you. So you have to be positive, and I think you can't shrink yourself to greatness, right? So the important piece here is that every company, every boardroom really needs to look at what is the opportunity for growth in this crisis. What is it that we can do? And there are things that people can do to actually accelerate growth again. So that whole focus on how do we get out of this pandemic, not just survive, but thrive, really? And how do we thrive in that is the key question and the key focus that should be there, I think, in every boardroom.
Sarojit has given me 3 more questions. Anup, you are the boss. Tell me, do I take it or not? You're on mute. So I will have to assume that you're saying yes. Okay, so I'm going to use that prerogative and go ahead. So the thing that the first question is, and I think all 3 of you can have one line each, that how do we strategize our marketing, communications, and campaign to cater to this alternate lifestyle? And the other question was, with reverse migration happening, will there be a spike in rural demand? So all 3 of you, and this would be the last question, can we have 1 or 2 lines on each one of them, on these 2 questions? First, can I go with you, Jayan?
Yeah, so the first part of the first question, I will duck and pass on to the head of our agency. Rohit and team are actually spending a lot of time to think about the future. We are busy with the present, so I will leave Rohit and his wisdom to guide us like they have always done for the last several decades now. And yes,
they're asking you because you increased your spends humongously during this period.
Yeah, it's again because of their advice. So
okay.
But the second part is very interesting because see, we are a company which work with Bharat, and every day 120 crore rupees of what you urban customers in India pay gets transferred to them. So this is where the role of rural organizations, the farmer organizations will actually come in. You need to kickstart the rural economy first to see that the urban economy grows. I mean, if my farmer earns the money, he will go to buy the paints and the FMCGs and the soaps and shampoos of the world. So this is what India needs. Fortunately, Dr. Kurian and Amul, I mean, India from becoming an import-dependent country to the largest producer of milk, we have seen in our front of our own eyes over the last 50 years. So when the government is talking local, doing local, I think these are the models which will help in, and the more Bharat succeeds, more India will prosper. So I think we are in the right time, and what Rohit's slide also mentioned, the focus on rural with farmers at the center will make a big change to the whole country and the entire industry per se.
Thank you, Jayan. Abhijit, you're on mute, Abhijit.
The communication possibly will be centered around health and hygiene, which is what is going to occupy the central space. We might see a lot of rural activation programs and consumer activation programs happening in the rural areas, which is likely. As far as the rural economy, whether it is going to do well or is going to really grow, I expect that it to do much better, given the fact that it is less affected by the disease. A lot of migration which is happening backwards, and sort of entrepreneurs might be born out of this, and also the fact that this direct linkage between marketing and the farmer, which is what the government is attempting, might help to realize better prices and therefore more rural prosperity. So rural as a whole, I think looks optimistic.
Great, thank you, Rohit.
So I want to give a bit of a different perspective on this, and this is something I've been talking about with a lot of our clients. Is really that consumers are walking through, to draw an analogy, a long dark tunnel, right? And what's there are 2 approaches that the brands and marketeers can take: is either wait for the light at the end of the tunnel, or light the tunnel. And I believe that as a brand, it is extremely important for the brand not to lose its voice in this crisis, and actually light that tunnel and walk that tunnel with the consumers. Because this is something that brand Amul has done in this crisis, to be there with the consumers in their hour of need. And I think that's something that I've seen Amul is a hugely trusted brand, but I think it stood by, if you say Amul Doodh Pita Hai India, then the fact is that when India needed it, it stood by that thing and said Amul Doodh Piyega India, right? So it was available for everybody. Like I wrote to Sodhi Saab, myself, saying that, when I went to the retail outlets and there was nothing available, the only one milk brand that was shining on the shelf was Amul, right? And so that gave you a huge sense of gratitude. And I think that thing of being there and partnering and pivoting and being helpful and understanding how the consumer needs to be talked to, tone sensitive, very, very important in this crisis.
Thank you, Rohit. I like the optimistic tone in terms of the light at the end of the tunnel. I think that has something to do with your yoga in terms of positivity. But thank you so much for. I'm going to, before I hand over to Vishu, I think there is just a quick summing on more probably 5-6 takeaway points. There's many great points here. I think the whole shift to safety is very, very important, not only from what we are going to do, but as a business, whether it is wellness, whether it is immunity, whether it is health, whether it is hygiene, there seems to be a big shift out there. Second, certainly a big trend is this whole digital and automation. How are you going to leverage them to make your businesses more efficient, and to how do you reach the consumer more efficiently? The third would be certainly looking at restructuring your supply chain to be able to make it more efficient, to be able to reach better. The fourth I would see is the whole communication that you're doing to consumers, and the communication that you're doing within, and the communication that you're doing from your leadership to keep morale up, to get your consumers connected with you. It's a great piece. The fifth one will be this whole focus on the Kirana shop and what it is going to do to you in terms of your next door guy who's going to give you a lot of support. And finally, the whole focus, the sixth point on the rural economy. I think we've been betting on the rural economy as an ITC for a long time. Our HR pals working with 4 million farmers. That's a fantastic shift which is going to happen. And for all of us hearing this, and all the panelists, I really hope the economy is going to pick up and we're going to see something much better. We have to see this as a new beginning, as certainly that light of that tunnel. And I'm sure that is where we're going to move. With that, I'm going to hand it over back to my friend and my colleague, Vishu Chatterjee, who's also the president of the chamber. I didn't realize you were here, Vishu. Otherwise, I would have put that office at the back. I would have let you do the moderation yourself. But over to you, and thank you, everyone. Stay safe and stay healthy. All the best.
It was wonderful. It was wonderful listening. Thank you, Nadeep. Wonderful listening to all the panelists and all the experiences that have been shared at this webinar. Shows the discipline, the dedication, and the determination to find opportunity to grow economic value. That comes out very clearly, and the conscious consumption is akin to our something like our responsible luxury, the credo of our hotels business. ITC is hotels business. And one aspect that I wanted to really share with all of you is, you have heard the business houses, what they are doing. Now, I think in the same breath, I'll implore all of you that once you are in a position, the lockdown is over, individually start refurbishing, replacing, change your old utensils, change this, change that, change your old clothes, buy new things, because individually we should be all engines of creation of demand. And that is something that this country will need. Those of us who can really take a step in this direction will help the others. And I'm sure that collaboration and compassion is another aspect which I think will get a little more established after this pandemic. And the new mantra for the new normal, I think, is going to be I for delivery for the business houses and we for survival. Thank you so much. And I'll pass on to Mr. Anup Hon for the formal vote of thanks. Thanks to all of you once again.
Thank you, Mr. Chatterjee. On behalf of the Bengal Chamber of Commerce and Industry and the Marketing Brand Committee, may I take this opportunity to thank the panelists, Abhijit Roy, Jayan Mehta, Mr. Rohit Ori, and our moderator, Najib Arif. I think I take away with me just one thing. Those who fight a crisis and emerge victorious are the ones who will keep tasting the growth into the future. So if you have reacted, if you not let this pandemic push you down, you're going to be certainly growing. And you have, I mean, hearing all of you, I think people should realize that corporate India is definitely ready and looking in the correct direction for a good tomorrow. Thank you very much and good evening. Bye-bye.
Mr. Chatterjee, Mr. Arif, Rohit, Mr. Jain Mehta, Mr. Obijit Roy, thank you all so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you.
And thank you all.